Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. This is DJ Sensei. You might remember me from such poker video series as Unconventional Wisdom, Mad Potters, Freestylin', and Triple the Gold. Today I am bringing you the pleasure of some 510 Pot Limit Omaha Ghost style. So, hopefully you will learn something, hopefully you'll enjoy it, and hopefully I will win all the monies. So, first hand here on the upper right, we've got a hand King, Queen, Jack 8, suited to the King. On the button, this is a pretty easy open. The 8 is a little bit dangly, not too bad though. It does still connect up with the Jack somewhat, and given the rest of the wrap is still intact, we're in pretty good shape. This hand, 10, 7, 7, 8, suited once. If the button was a little bit tighter, I think I would probably open here, but he is a pretty loose player, as you can see in my heads-up display, so I'm going to go ahead and fold this. It's a hand that looks better than it actually is. You know, you're not going to be playing too many big pots and you're happy with the results with a hand like that. Same here with this 8-8-3-9 double suited. Under the gun, not really a hand I'm particularly happy about. It doesn't really play all that well out of position. Okay, up here on the top right, we've got 10-7-6-4 double suited. Not a bad hand. Facing a raise and a 3-bet. If this guy was actually very nitty, I would probably cold call here because my hand fares very well against a hand like aces, especially with position. But this guy is very loose aggressive. I'll go ahead and talk about the HUD here for a bit so you guys can actually know what I'm talking about. My HUD is going to have the four numbers here in color are the VPIP, pre-flop raise, post-flop aggression, and number of hands. The other set of numbers is going to be their responses to continuation bets on the flop, fold, call, and raise, respectively. And the last number here is simply the amount that they've won or lost. Generally, I'm not going to give too much credit to that without a really large sample size, and most of these guys don't have that. But it is, a good indication of whether somebody is just spewing off money or if they actually are, succeeding. In Omaha, I feel like it's a little bit trickier to make any real claims about someone's skill based on this number. As you all should probably know by now, Omaha is a very high variance game, and it probably takes tens or hundreds of thousands of hands to get any real consistent, useful data about that. But in the short run, we'll take what we can get. Okay, here got queens with the king jack suited once. Definitely a nice little hand. Raised it under the gun and got min re-raised by this guy. Now, I don't really think the min re-raise is necessarily indicative of aces. I think that if he had aces, he probably would be re-raising larger. So he probably has some sort of rundown hand or something. If I had kings here, I probably would go ahead and 3-bet, or 4-bet that is, and just try and get money in now. With queens, and a pretty good connecting card, I'm happy to see a flop here and go from there. And the plan now is just going to be to check raise and get it in. He's an aggressive player. He's probably going to go ahead and fire this flop with most all of his range. If not, then that sucks. We're not too happy about that turn card. But if we check, I think he may well use it as a bluff. I can check call one street here. Barring that, well, we do have the sort of nuts now. So I'm going to go ahead and value bet here. Hoping to get looked up by, trip aces, or even just 2-pair or something. I don't expect to see him show with a flush too often here, given the line he's taken so far. And I don't expect to get raised here very much either. So, kind of a curious line that he took. I'm not quite sure what he's going to show up with there, but it could be like a middle rundown kind of hand. So, who knows? In general, I'm going to be playing very tight out of position. In Omaha, I mean, in all poker games, you know that position is of utmost importance. But I think in an Omaha, it actually perhaps even more so than others. You will more often end up with a drawing hand in Omaha, as you simply have more cards. There's more draws. A lot of the Omaha battles are going to be fought by one big draw versus another, and out of position playing draws obviously is very difficult. If you're playing against competent opponents, they're not going to pay you off as much when you get there. They're not going to let you get there as cheaply or as easily, and it's really just everything's working against you when you're out of position with a drawing hand. So that's definitely not an easy situation to be in. I do like to 3-bet a decent range of strong hands, and it doesn't have to be ace. It doesn't have to be a super big Broadway double suited things. You could have a good wrap rundown. Could be kings in a lot of spots, all 3-bet. But hopefully we'll find ourselves in situations to explore that. This is a pretty good example of a hand right here, actually, that it looks pretty good, but played from out of position is actually going to be pretty tough a lot of the time. There's a limper here. I'm kind of torn between raising here and just checking to see a flop. I'm going to go ahead and raise just to sort of get myself some fold equity. He's never going to fold here after limping, much less in Omaha. And that's a pretty good flop. So I'm going to go ahead and fire out. C-bet, got top 2 here. If he puts in a raise, I'm pretty likely to call and look for a safe turn card and then get the rest in. If he's got a set, then that's just a cooler. But big draws are certainly a very likely part of his range if he's going to raise there. And so I want to see a safe turn card rather than just get it in with top 2. With top set, I would definitely probably want to just jam. Same with middle set, because middle set basically is top set on that situation, given that he limp called pre-flop. This is kind of not a great hand, but I'm going to go ahead and open on the button. It's double suited, I've got a suited ace, I've got a few low cards that are sort of coordinated, so could be certainly worse. Here, obviously monotone is not a great thing to have, but with position and a pretty good run of cards here against an aggressive player, I'm happy to see a flop. I'm going to go ahead and c-bet here. This is a good flop for a c-bet. If he doesn't have a good piece of that, then he's going to have to lay it down. Get check raised, obviously with no piece. I can't call even if the good price. So up here, got aces with the 10, suited once. Not the best aces, but I'm going to go ahead and 3-bet here. And after getting squeezed and called, I'm a little less excited about my monotone run here, so I'm going to go ahead and let that go. Get cold called here by the small blind, and of course the pre-flop raiser calls as well. Well, that tells me he doesn't have aces. So basically what I'm going to do here is I'm more excited to get it against the short stack, who's actually a pretty bad player. So I'm going to go ahead and bet about 200 into 350. If the shorter stack here jams, then I can call it off, and that's alright. Probably not going to be super excited about the results, but I'm getting a good price, and aces here with the the ace of diamonds is pretty reasonable. But once this guy overshoves, then my aces are obviously not going to be any good, so I can safely fold it. And he's got 2 pairs against his set, and saved ourselves some money there by the guy being in the pot. Okay, in the bottom right here, I opened up with ace king 10 7 suited to the king. A little bit of a medium strength hand. I get 3-bet in position by a pretty aggressive player. I'm actually going to go ahead and fold here. And I think that one thing that a lot of PLO players do when they start to learn the game, they sort of play under the assumption that they never have to fold pre-flop. If they raise, someone 3-bets, any 4 cards are good. You can call, you're getting priced in. I fold there because I feel like my hand, the ace king 10 7, is actually being dominated by a lot of his range. and I just don't want to get involved post-flop. I feel like a lot of good flops for me are going to end up with me stacking off bad because he's one step ahead. He's got, if I flop, a king or something, I'm going to get it in, and he's going to have aces a lot. If he's got a bigger ace king, kind of ace king queen jack or something, then I'm in pretty bad shape too. So just sort of a reverse implied odds situation there, I think. Here I got two calls. I still just have top pair, top kicker, and that middle 7 pairing is not really something I'm happy to see. So even though I'm not really super expecting to see them show up with 7s, given that they called pre-flop, I think that there's a good chance someone has ace 7 here. If they have ace 2, which is also pretty reasonable, I think that I just got there. Now the flush comes. By checking the turn, I basically gave up any representation of having a full boat. So I just hope to check down here and hope that my hand is good. With two opponents, there's really a good chance that somebody backdoored a flush too, or perhaps made a wheel. And thankfully, I don't have to look them up since the other guy took care of it for me. And yeah, so this guy had a huge hand and didn't 3-bet it, which is, I think, a poor play. With position and a hand that big, I think 3-betting is definitely a good play. That being said, if the blinds are very weak players, it could be argued that you want to smooth call and let them in so they can make worse hands. That's definitely a hand that will make a lot of the nuts, basically. Here we've got ace 10, 9, 7, suited to the 10, but out of position, facing under the gun raise. Gonna go ahead and fold that. Here, ace queen, queen 7, but nothing suited. Gonna fold that to a raise. And here, with king, king, 3, 8, only suited once, I'm gonna go ahead and just call here. Basically playing my kings for set value. It would be nice to flop like, undercards and the spade draw, and then I could be happy about getting it in. Here, I've actually got the nut flush draw. I'm going to check and look to play a multi-way pot with the nut flush draw here. If I can get 3-way action, then I'm really happy about getting my chips in the middle. If not, then I may well get it in behind. But now we got a bet and a call. I'm going to put a... No, I'll just call here. I'll just call. I think that I don't really have much fold equity. If I raise there's a pretty good chance that one of them will fold and I'll end up heads up, which is not really something we want. And it gives us a chance to see a good turn card too. This one obviously is a bad turn card. Ace Queen, which is probably the most likely holding of this guy right here. Ooh, interesting. Okay. Well, now I think we actually may have the... weird. I'm going to have to think about this one. This guy took a very strange line to have a queen or to have aces. So I think that my queen's full of kings may be the best hand here, and I certainly don't think this guy has a queen in his hand either. I'm going to go ahead and call here. I may get shown a random queen if he's got like king, queen, jack, 10 or something. But I think there's a pretty good chance that he's just bluffing because the third queen came. Now my hand is basically dead. Yeah, when he puts that raise in with no fold equity, there's basically, no chance that he's bluffing. And even though I'm getting huge pot odds, I can't call that, sadly. So at this point, he's probably got like aces full or something, and he's thinking the same thing. Although he's in a tougher spot than I am because he's got the second nuts. Yeah. So, kind of got lucky there with his queen. Down here, this is an interesting hand. It's 6-5, 8-6, double suited. It looks really nice, but we're out of position. This is most certainly a drawing hand, and we hit bottom set, then we could be in trouble. So I'm going to fold that out of position. 3-betting it is an option, but again, most players just don't ever fold to 3-bets, and that's you're not going to make too many great flops that way. So here we've got aces with a jack and an 8 suited to once, which is nice. Gonna go ahead and raise it up with the limper. Here we got a pretty similar hand, only one suited. Closing the action, we can certainly consider a call here. And I think it's a little bit marginal, maybe. But it's probably good to get ourselves in more situations here for the sake of the video. And yeah, we get some heat here. Down here we get led into with nothing really but a gut shot and multi-way pot. I don't expect to really stand up there very much. Here we do have a wrap, but there's a flush draw out there and the guy behind us left to act. Might be a little bit nitty there, but I don't know if we really get paid off that much anyhow. Here we've got 3 pairs, and he's got no money behind, and they're bottom 3 too, so meh. So playing a little nitty right now. I think that's fine. We haven't found ourselves in too many spots to become unnitty. We got pocket queens with a couple of danglers not suited at all. Just going to want to dump that to stay out of trouble. You're not going to flop very good with that very often. So I would probably raise the button with that, but I would not play it otherwise. And I might overcall. If I'm getting a good multi-way pot and there's a lot of money in there, then I might call for a set value purely. But even that I'm not terribly excited about. This is a hand that I would happily play in position, but out of position it's pretty rough. Here's a little something worth looking at. Pocket queens with a jack and a 9 and suited. Now I haven't actually done any research on the difference between having two spades in your hand versus having 3 spades, and how that affects things. Until now, I've basically just been assuming that it's not really that much different, and that seems to have worked out so far. Could go either way here. I think because my queens are very strong, I'm going to go ahead and 3-bet. Also, this guy's very aggressive and open to the button, and I think that he's obviously got a weaker range here. He folds, which not too many players will fold in that spot, so that shows a little restraint on his part. We'll have to keep that in mind. Against players who do fold pre-flop, I'm much more likely to 3-bet, a little wider, knowing that they're pretty likely to fold just kind of weak hands. That being said, if he's risk raising a really wide range in the button, then obviously he's more likely to fold it. Okay. Here we bet and get called in position. I'm going to go ahead and fire a second barrel here. I think that if he had, on this particular board, if he had the nut flush draw, I think he's pretty likely to raise the flop because he probably has a gut shot or a straight draw to go with it. And I don't expect him to just flat call the flop there with the nut flush draw very often for that reason. Here, raise kings from out of position. We do get a little bit of action. I'm not terribly excited about it. That's a pretty bad turn card too. I think a lot of his range just improved and got there. We do have 2 blockers to the nuts, but I don't really give too much credence to the whole blockers thing. especially in spots where someone's pretty likely to have those other cards. Here we've got the cheating boat, but basically a bluff catcher at best. So yeah, he had Broadway and checked it back. This is the kind of hand that I could see raising the button with against tight opponents. But against looser ones, this guy's pretty loose. Not so good. Pocket nine's a little bit too low to raise unless they've got good coordinating cards to go with them. Here's an little something. Double suited, the king, queen, 10. The 4 is a dangler, but the 10 is definitely strong enough to play. And it's a hand that if I do play, I'm probably going to be re-raising this more often than I'm going to be flat calling a raise. We've got a lot of good drawing potential, but not so much to the nuts. Neither flush draw is to the nuts, of course. And if that's the case, we kind of want to be in a bigger pot with fewer players. Monotone flop. Gonna go ahead and bet a little closer to half pot here. It's on monotone flops. I think that you don't really need to bet quite as big. It's usually a situation where either they have it or they don't. And betting half pot gives you a little more room to make second or third barrels if you think it's a good idea. So that's my monotone pot wisdom. Monotone flop, that is. Okay, we get repopped here. This is a little bit dicey of a hand to be getting involved with here, but the price is good and there's a lot of money behind. So I'm going to go ahead and call, see what we can do here. Kind of a dangerous flop for us. We've got top pair, which may or may not be any good at all. Flush draw, which again may or may not be any good. We have backdoor flush draw. So this is tough. If we get bet at here, which he's probably going to do with most of his range, it's not really easy. I mean, we can't really call here too much because none of our draws are to the nuts. If we get there with hearts, we don't really know how that stands. If we get a diamond or something, then that's kind of cool. But like, yeah. So against a pretty tight player, we've got a good number of hands on this guy. He's very tight. I'm gonna go ahead and give it to him here. Against a more loosey-goosey player, I'm probably more likely to stack it off there, assuming that they're going to show up with some bluffs, some like runs that are just c-betting and things like that. But I don't really expect that so much out of this guy. Here, if this was suited to the ace, I'd be happy to play it. Suited to the 10, not so much. Out of position. This is a much more reasonable hand. Very similar, but much better. Suited to the ace, with the button. This is a hand I'm going to cold call with. Most of my draws here are to the nuts, so if we get multi-way action, that's cool. The best case scenario here is we flop, a big wrap and nut flush draw, maybe a straight with a nut flush redraw, things like that. Really, best case scenario. Up here, just pretty standard heads up continuation bet situation. Here we've got a low run. I'm actually just going to limp behind here. This is certainly a valuable hand, but it hits the flop a little less often than a lot of other, a little bit higher runs. So if I raise there, I'm very often going to be firing a continuation bet on a flop that's not so good for me. And that's just not something I'm terribly excited about. We've got bottom 2 here and a gut shot, but flush draws out there. There's a limped pot, so we really have to be more looking for the nuts. With facing a pot bet and a call, this is just going to be a dump because so few of our outs are clean, and chances are we are pretty far behind. Here's another sort of fun double suited. Got a dangler in there, but the top 3 cards are pretty well coordinated and we're double suited, so I'm happy to play this. Having the position would certainly be better, but I'm willing to do without that. Here we have top pair, flush draw, and a gut shot. Likely to give a lot of action here. Mainly because if he raises here, okay, he calls. When he just calls there, the turn breaks off completely. I'm going to go ahead and fire a big second barrel here. Well, not super big, but good size second barrel. When he flat calls that flop, I really don't expect him to show up with any sets or any really big draws. I think most of his hands are going to be like weak draws, maybe top pair and a straight draw, maybe just a naked nut flush draw, things like that. If he had a really strong draw, strong hand, he'd want to protect it. So I think that second barrel is going to work very often. If it doesn't, then the third barrel is going to be very effective as well. And of course, we still do have some good draws ourselves, so it's not all, we're not just going to have to be bluffing the whole time. And Omaha is a game, one of the things that I've sort of discovered as I've been playing is that for the most part, people play a little more straightforwardly. No one is being too terribly deceptive in this game. And as a result, you can be a lot more confident with your finding weakness in your opponents. In most cases, if the board has, any draws at all, and someone is playing passively, they don't have the nuts, they don't have a huge draw, and a second barrel will get them off their hand. So you can generally read people's actions as pretty close to what they actually have most of the cases. Here's a nice hand. Double suited rundown. The gap is at the bottom end, which is great for making the nuts. Definitely happy about this hand and looking to play a big pot with it. I didn't see it as a min raise. Probably could have called that maybe. Oh well. And here, closing the action, I think we can make a sort of a loose call here. It's a good flop for us. We got top 2 here. Definitely a good situation. If he raises me here, then I'm not excited about it, but I think I have to stack off because I'm out of position. I can't just wait for that, good card. Obviously, I don't have much of a HUD on here. If I knew he was very aggressive, I might check here and try and check raise. But not knowing that, I'm just going to go ahead and barrel it again. It's kind of a tough spot for me if he calls, given the stack sizes and the pot size, and there's going to be so many bad river cards. That obviously is a pretty bad river card. So I obviously can't really lead into him. He's not going to call it down with worse. So I've got to check. Now it just becomes a matter of whether or not I call a shove. His stack size is really primed to jam here. I kind of hate it either way. So this is a situation where having reads would help a lot. I don't know if he would jam with King 10 here. I think that kind of makes a little difference in my decision. If he would, then I think it's closer to a fold. If he would just check that back, then I think it's closer to a call. I'm going to go ahead and fold here. I think that his range just has a lot of hands that beat me. And even though he could be bluffing, I think that most of his range is actually there already. Just got there at least. I wish I was suited once with this queen, ace, queen, jack, jack, but out of position against a pretty tight opening range. It's basically just a set mine for the jacks and like hopefully a flop of nuts. I'm not gonna have any free rolls really with a hand like that, so. Here, double suited flat run all the way down. Gonna go ahead and I'm gonna go ahead and 3-bet this. It's not. Basically, the reason I 3-bet here is so I can make sure to get the pot heads up. I don't want to get overcalled. This guy is pretty tight. That's true. So he's not gonna get involved too much. Well, I didn't really expect that, but that's nice. I 3-bet there. If I flop any good piece of it at all, then I can go ahead and fire the rest in on the flop. It's a little bit low to have the 5-4 3-2 is definitely low. Not going to make quite as many hands as I got a shout out on the rail here. Apparently Death Donkey smells bad. Well, I will let Donkey fight that battle. Okay, here we get squeezed. We've got queens with an ace-10. With a worse set of queens, I would fold here because I think reverse implied odds are definitely bad. With these, I'm going to call. I'm also hoping to get overcalled here to sweeten my price. My hand is such that I'm happy to see multi-way action. Either I'm going to hit the flop or I'm not. Okay, down here I 3-bet with these kings against a very loose aggressive player. I'm going to go ahead and c-bet about 3/4 pot and hopefully get him to lay down. If he gives me any action, then I'm going to have to fold it because, well, there's that out there. This, I get checked here. Ooh, nice card. This is going to be a fold facing 4 bets. I'm going to bet about a half pot here, try and get stacks in. I'm going to go ahead and check behind here. I think I was going to do that quicker, but I was distracted. Here, I'm going to call, obviously. My hand is fares well. I'm going to go ahead and 4-bet to try and isolate and get this guy out. And I'm in pretty reasonable shape. I kind of wish he didn't have the hard draw covered, but what can you do? And here he comes out for pot. It's kind of a strange to check the flop there, but with just aces and a queen kicker, it's not really a call there. He's timing down here. Hopefully he's got just a random jack, or he's got like a flush or something. That's too bad. With my stack size, if I was shorter, I would probably check the turn there and give him some rope. But we had a little more than the pot left, so I kind of wanted to get more money on the flop there, or more money on the turn, so I could shove the river if I need to. Here, it's almost the exact same situation, except that I now have a hand that actually is better in multi-way pots. So I'm gonna go ahead and just call here, hope our friend comes along as well, and then if I flop good, we can get it in. Okay, obviously we're getting it in 3 ways, and not in a, well, we're not in great shape here. That's a good flop. Pink. Nom 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 nom. So that's kind of a cooler for him to get aces twice in a row and have him correct both times. Here we do have top pair, but no kickers what to speak of. We have inside straight draw, but out of position, no flush draw. Not good news. Just gonna get out of that pot before I get in trouble. Small blind open limps in. So go ahead and punish him with a raise with our pretty strong hand, and c-bet the flop, take it down. This is kind of a marginal hand, but the big blind's very tight. If it folds around to us, I'd probably raise there to try and steal it. Here is the same situation. Not a great hand, but the big blind is very tight. I can go ahead and steal. And we have a decent hand if we do get fight back at. Here, I missed completely. Skull Ace is on board. I could bet out strongly here, hoping that they read that as very strong on account of me betting into 3 people. But because I have 3 opponents, it's just too likely that one of them has an ace in their hand. And I don't really want to try and make somebody fold an ace there on the flop. If we were 3-handed, I would probably bet that. And heads up, I would definitely bet it. But 4 ways, I just think it's just a little bit too hopeful to think that no one's got an ace. Or that if they do have an ace, they're actually going to fold it to my bet. Here we've got sort of a marginal multi-faceted hand. We've got top pair, got a gut shot, but 3-way action. This is a flop that I'm pretty likely to get check raised on, so I'm going to check behind, look for a good turn. Here we have the bottom end. I'm going to go ahead and check, basically for pot control and to bluff and deuce. I'm not going to get a lot of action from him unless he's got me beat. But if we slow it down a bit, I can probably get some later street action. And this guy pots it into us, so without any real strong draws or anything. There's a decent chance that he would check behind the flop with the nuts because I checked to him and he expects me to fold to a bet. But I think if he raises the turn, we can still fold it pretty reasonably. And most players, again, won't get all that tricky. Even on a board like that, even if it's apparent that my check seems weak, he's just not going to check behind the nuts there, seeing as how it's the PLO and all. A not terrible pair of queens here, but these guys behind me are all very loose. I'd be happier to play queens against some tighter opponents, or obviously to have better coordinating cards with them. This is a hand that at first glance is like, ooh, sweet, look at that. Not a huge hand, but our blinds are very tight, and it is a decent hand. You know, we do have a suited king, got a couple of the ace king, which is something. And it's a hand that I would happily fold to a 3-bet. This does not have very good potential at all for re-raised pots. We have top 2, a limit pot. I'm going to go ahead and raise this up. Just try and end this thing quicker than later. I think he's probably bluffing there a whole lot too. I have 3 pairs. Sometimes I might raise that, but out of position I don't expect to get really folded. I'm going to make a loose call here because we have the queen with it. And I'm going to go ahead and bet here. I'm not really expecting to get check raised too often. I think if he has the 5-3, he's going to go ahead and bet out into me. That's obviously a bad card and a pretty easy lay down. I might turn this hand into as a bluff. This is interesting. Our hand just got a whole lot more drawy over here. We've got like every draw in the book. And this guy's short, so if he gets stacks in with us, I don't really care about. I don't really mind. I can probably isolate against this guy and not worry too much about it. Okay, checks around. Clean turn card. I'm going to go ahead and bet out here. Represent the nuts, and probably fire 2 big barrels. The only guy I'm really concerned about here is this guy on my left. I don't think that either of these guys could have the nuts at this point. So I expect to win the pot right now. And if not now, then the river is going to be an easy second barrel. The only thing that would stop me is if the board paired. Okay, here I've got a pretty strong double-suited big card situation. So I'm going to go ahead and 3-bet that. And here, and he goes and 4-bets it. Well, I'm not excited about it, but at this point we are priced in to call and hopefully flop something good and get the rest in. Yeah, that'll work. No, he doesn't have much more than half the pot left, so he's going to get it. He probably has aces. Yeah, I mean to bink bink. Yeah, to 4-bet there. I mean it's basically aces and nothing else. It is a little sophisticated to 4-bet there with less than aces. Generally, like a hand like ace king, a big Broadway double suited thing is certainly pretty good for 4-betting, because some people will fold kings. But it works better against guys who actually are going to fold in that spot. I would say light 4-betting is a pretty sophisticated move in PLO. So yeah, we're just busting everybody here. This is a hand I like a lot. The king 9 8 7 double suited. Very sweet hand. Here, this is kind of a bad flop for our hand. We don't have any real equity. I expect to get some action from one or the other of them, so I'm just going to go ahead and give up on it. Here with 10s and the 8-7, we get squeezed on. It's a marginal call, but because we do have full stacks with this guy, I think that we can call. And again, I expect to get overcalled here to sweeten our price. I wish the board wasn't paired, because that doesn't really help our cause. Okay, leads into us. Leads in half pot. I'm gonna go ahead and raise this up as a semi bluff. Well, more of a real bluff. He's never gonna call us with a worse hand. He checks. Go ahead and check again. Not too excited about getting stacks in at this point. Any 3-bets. I don't really expect to see aces here too often. If he does, he might have a hand like, just really bad aces in flop top set. I think that's probably the most likely case here. Either he has like a big wrap. So, and here I'm actually going to go ahead and take a stab at it. There's a reasonable chance that the button here has a real hand. We do have a gut shot now. Whoop-de-doo. And I think we have a lot of fold equity there as well. Looks like Sick Call Kenny is grazing our presence, which I'm pretty happy about. He's not ashamed to dump some money online now and again. That's a pretty good flop. This is a pretty good hand here as well. I'm going to go ahead and check behind here and let him catch up a little bit. If he's got a 9, I feel like I'm going to get his stack regardless. He's not going to be check raise bluffing me a whole lot, and I'm not really all that worried about him beating me, so I'll take one street off, give him a reason to play a big pot with me. Here, a really easy call against this guy who's really tight, so call, look for a good flop. Not a good flop there. We can safely check and fold. Every now and again I might check raise bluff here, or even check call, and then if he checks behind the turn, then I would bet the river as a bluff. But I don't... I might go for... Yeah, let's try this. This is going to be a 2-barrel bluff. I feel like he's going to check behind there with a lot of weak flushes, and When I fire two barrels, he's gonna have a hard time calling with like 9 or an 8 high flush. Um, so I would never bluff there if I could only fire one barrel, because no one's gonna fold any flush for one barrel. But if I can fire two, then I can get him to do that. Oh, I love it when things work. I think it's a pretty important concept in all forms of poker, actually. If one barrel is just not going to get the job done no matter what, then you should never fire in a spot where you can only fire that one barrel. But if you can get a good enough read on someone's hand based on their early actions, pre-flop or flop actions, if you can get an idea that he is just not going to show up there with, if he has the nuts there, he's probably not going to just check behind and call a turn, although it would be pretty tricky to do that. And I think that wouldn't be a bad play. But, I just don't see that happening too often from these guys, so. Two barrels is much more effective than one on monotone boards. A little bit of a lull in the action here. That's alright. Been doing pretty well so far. Running good, certainly, but I think a lot of our plays are working out, which is really nice to see, especially when I'm making a video. That's the worst thing ever, is when you make a video and explain all your plays and then they fail miserably. Or even if they run into the nuts, then, it pretty much counts as a miserable failure. Suited the queen, I'm going to go ahead and fold this. If we suited the ace, I would raise this hand. But under the gun there, I'm afraid that that's not going to cut the mustard. I'm tempted to raise this, but these blinds are pretty loose. Against tight blinds, I might. Guy limps in. I'm going to go ahead and raise this here. It's not a huge hand, but it's pretty decent, and we do have position. I'm going to raise here up and get myself a little bit of fold equity on the post flop. This is a good flop for me. He's pretty unlikely to have a good piece of that, so I expect the c-bet to work very often. Ooh, here we go. I might get frisky and raise this if Sick Call Kenny lets me. Aw. This hand I could play in a few different ways, actually. Depending on the action in front of me, I might 3-bet it, I might flat call it. There's a couple different ways here. This guy's pretty loose passive. This guy's pretty tight behind me. I'm just going to go ahead and flat call here. I expect his hand range to be pretty strong, and I'm not as concerned about getting... okay. I think what I'm going to do here is check and probably call 1-bet. I like a number of my outs here. I could check raise, but if he has a flush draw, then check raising is going to end up in a pretty tough spot. This is a pretty good card for me. I'm actually going to go ahead and turn into a semi-bluff. If he raises, then I can happily fold because I don't have any draws big enough to continue, really. But it's a good card for me, and okay, weird. I don't know why he would just call there. I'm gonna bluff here, I think. Although he might call with aces. Kind of a weird spot. I really just don't think he's ever going to show up with a particularly strong hand there. I think that he's very unlikely to have the nuts, basically, and he kind of needs them to continue. Here, I like this hand a little bit. I'm going to just limp behind, though. And here we've got the, well, some something or other. But only one player, obviously we're going to fire a bet here. In multi-way pots, I usually don't get too frisky on these monotone flops, especially limped pots. There's not much out there worth fighting for. I'm basically just gonna not worry too much about it. I'm gonna go ahead and pot out here. In a limped pot with only one opponent, my pot there is not because my draw is so big. My draw is okay, but it's because I think that he's just going to fold so much. I would pot there just as easily with complete air. I'm going to complete here only because I have the King Queen 9, which can make some wrap type hands. I'm not sure entirely how I feel about completing in PLO. I feel like it seems justifiable. You got 4 cards and you're getting a good price. But I think you should definitely be concerned about hands that aren't going to make the nuts very often. You should have at least one kind of nut hand potential thing going on in your hand before you're going to be completing. You know, a suited ace, you know, a few 3 cards in a run kind of situation. You know, maybe a decent pair of some sort. But just because you have 4 cards doesn't mean you should be completing. And that's the reverse implied odds issue. The immediate price is certainly, obviously, going to be good for you, but when you make the second nuts against the nuts, you're going to lose a lot of money. Here we have a standard limp behind with queens, pretty bad queens, but these guys both have sort of a middle stack. I give myself a chance to hit a set and get it in. Got a flush draw too, which is nice, and I don't expect to see the nuts turn up here. No one's going to have aces in a limped pot, unless this guy does, but that would just kind of suck. Here, if he was shorter, I might just put him in. As it stands, I can fold. I don't have any redraws or anything, and he's very passive, so I expect to see him show up with the nuts pretty much. Sadly, no action here. Oh well. If I had the nut flush draw there, I probably could consider just flat calling it, maybe. But a second set is a lot more in danger of getting sucked out on by aces up. We're so close to the treasured quad 10s. I still haven't gotten quad 10s yet, but I'm really excited about the possibility of it happening someday. I hope we can get some like double suited aces here to finish off the session. That'd be nice. Meh. Meh. Alright, I'm going to play one more orbit on each table. I'm going to stack somebody at any cost. Again, I'm going to punish this limper. I also have pretty good hands too, so that's nice. And that's a good enough flop. This is just a very standard, C-bet. Make it a little bit smaller too because it's kind of it's a hit or miss. Either he's got it or he doesn't. He's not going to give me action if he doesn't, and he's not going to call if he does. Wait, no. The other way around. Yeah. No, the drier the flop, the smaller your bet has to be, basically. Yes. This is a pretty nice hand, but not a hand I really want to play multi-way, so I'm going to go ahead and 3-bet it. And try and get the pot heads up here. And then I can flop something good and mash pot, or, get more monies in. Okay, that's a good enough flop for me, because it looks like if I have aces, then he's often. I'm going to bet pretty large here. If he's got a big enough draw to continue, he's going to continue no matter how big I bet. If he doesn't, if he has a hand that isn't big enough, okay, well, he does. I don't want to fire small, though. I don't want to fire small and get called, because my hand has just zero potential at all. So one big bet should be enough to do it there. And if he calls, then I might find myself in an awkward spot on the turn. But if it's a good clean turn, I can probably jam and represent the aces. He's never going to show up with aces there after he doesn't 4-bet. That's just one of those things that people just don't really do. So, why can't you guys squeeze so we can get all the money in the middle? Lame. Go ahead and fire 1-bet here. And hopefully not get check raised. If I get check raised, it's a pretty easy fold for me. If I get check called on a clean turn, that's good. I can barrel it again. He's not going to show up here with really too many better hands at all, except possibly Queen 10. I really don't expect to get check raised here because that would come out of nowhere. If he had a strong enough hand that he wants to give me a big pot, he would have played on the flop. Well, weird. So yeah, I think most likely here he's probably got Queen 10, was looking for a safe turn card to get it in. And yeah, obviously aces here, no redraws or anything. It would take a really sick read for me to stack off. So goodbye, sweet aces. Come back soon. Alas. I do think it's definitely a good spot for second barrel, though, because I am value betting a lot of the time against his sort of wrap and flush draw kind of hands. Those are going to be a lot easier for me to play, with position too. On a bad river card, if he donks into me, then I can usually fold. And a good river card, then he checks, I can usually check behind because there's no value in a bet. Alright, one time dealer. Yeah, alright, good enough. Simple bet fold. And that'll do it. Well, thanks for watching. Hopefully you learned something today. Hopefully you will go out there and play some PLO. And hopefully you will stack some fools. Please feel free to comment in the thread. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, let us know. So signing off for DeucesCracked, this is DJ Sensei, and take it easy.